Hello, my name is Andrew, and today we're talking about the best barefoot gifts for zero drop holidays. So let's start with the basics, and one of the things that I always recommend for people is just a simple wool felt insole. If you have a friend or family member who's kind of interested in, getting into more natural and barefoot type stuff, this is a great place to start because you can just put it into your existing shoes. There are a lot of barefoot brands that sell them like pre-cut, but I really like the ones that are on Etsy. You can buy these sheets where, it's just like a square and then you just use an existing insole and you just cut out whatever shape you want, so they'll please pretty much everyone. They're great for winter because they smell nice. They're antimicrobial, they're temperature regulating, they're insulating, and they don't mess with ground field. So you can replace kind of like those thick, clunky insoles that come with a lot of shoes with something more natural and more comfortable. Another great barefoot gift is injinji merino wool toe socks. Again, they're super breathable, temperature regulating, moisture wicking, antimicrobial, and they also spread your toes out, which is nice for anyone getting into barefooting because it gives you a little feel for what it's like to have some toe splay, And I find I can just use these day after day after day, and I don't really have to wash them, which is great for longevity. And you basically just hang them out in the sun. They have different weights and lengths. So this is the one that I use the most. I use this in the winter. This is the crew. And then they have the mini crew, which is kind of like ankle socks. This is nice for if you have like semi-tall boots or, like running shoes that are a little bit higher, trail shoes, that sort of thing. And then they've got the lightweight sock. This is the liner sock. I feel like it works really well with the mid-weight sock if you need something where like you want a little more warmth, but you don't want something super thick. And then for super cold days, I'll oftentimes use like a thick smartwool. Again, they have multiple thicknesses. You can also go with Darn Tough. I think they make really great socks. They just feel a little more scratchy to me, and they also tend to be tighter. I like smartwools because they're a little bit more stretchy. There's more room. And like with the mountaineering sock especially, you get this super thick puffy layer, which is really nice for putting over toe socks. These are basically all I've worn for 7 years because they're so comfortable. I really like the toe splay. And when you have feet that look like this, it can really help because you can get moisture, building up in there when you just wear a regular sock as your base layer. So yeah, I love injinjis. They keep me warm and I use them for running and hiking and pretty much everything. Another safe bet would be a pair of Barefoot Slippers. These are the mukishoes pantufa. And for someone who's just getting into barefooting, these are a little bit less intimidating, because most people are used to either going barefoot or wearing socks or wearing lightweight footwear. So this is a great way to get someone into zero drop type footwear. I really like this slipper because it's got a stretchy collar here, so it gives you a little more security. They're easy to slip on with the pull tab here. You can even bend the back down if you're the sort of person who just likes to slip on. But then they've got a nice wide toe box, and it's stretchy both because the rubber is soft and flexible and thin, and because the upper is 100% wool, so it's very soft, really breathable as well. And they also feel really amazing barefoot. But again, if you want to keep them clean, you can use some injinjis, which also help with airflow and just a little bit of extra insulation if it's super cold, In terms of the sole, it's got a 3.5 millimeter sole, so this is probably the most flexible sole that you're gonna find for a barefoot shoe. But like I said, most people aren't gonna mind that because they're used to it, but it's got a nice sticky tread. So if you're shopping for someone who's a little bit older and really needs that non-slip tread, for falling, this is a great option, and it gives them more sensitivity, so they're more aware of their environment, which is great. And also the sole is stitched, which is great for long-term durability. Another good barefoot slipper option for a holiday gift is the Kingdom of Wow slipper. They come in high top. They also have lower ones and lighter weight summer as well, but they're nice balance because they're both wool and bamboo, so they can work in multiple seasons. And you can see that they've got a little bit more air in there, which is nice. And you can also stack up socks in there if you want them to be a little bit warmer, but they have more of a traditional slipper feel to them. They're soft. If you need to walk around the house in the morning and not wake other people up, this is a better option than something with a rubber sole like the mukishoes pantufa because it's got leather on the bottom. Is very soft. You're basically a ninja with these. I do think they get a little more tapered towards the tip, so I would recommend, if anything, either go with your normal size or size up just to give yourself a little bit of room if you have extra wide feet, but you can probably just go with your normal size. I am a 10.5 and I went with a large. Those fit me really well. But another one that feels great to wear wear barefoot, very soft and silky. And they're not quite as grippy as the rubber sole of mukishoes, but leather has some decent traction. Also, you may not be able to find them in winter, but these are the vivobarefoot ababa, another good slipper option. These are the best for if you want to use them outside because the sole is a little bit thicker. It's 4 millimeters. Still has a wide toe box, a little bit more tapered towards the tip, but the leather is fairly stretchy, and usually leather will conform to your feet over time, which is great. They feel very soft on the inside, so another one that's excellent for wearing barefoot. And they've got a soft leather lining on the bottom as well. And you can't quite slip into them without holding the back of it, but they've got this nice tab, so it's pretty quick. And overall, these are my favorite for all season use because you can use them outside, you can use them indoors, you know, they're flexible enough for that. And the leather gives you a little bit of protection for cooler, colder temperatures, but it's also open and, you know, breathable enough for hot weather too. If you're buying for someone who's going on vacation to somewhere warm, this is the Totem Alpha Blackbear. This is my favorite barefoot sandal of all time. I love the toe box. It's more squared off, gives your toes a ton of room to splay out, and it looks kind of like a Roman soldier sandal, you know, it just has that sort of ancient warrior vibe, which I love. The straps are super comfortable. They're very soft. They don't rub anywhere, even on the posts, which are normally a hard spot on sandals. They've got adjustment in the back and the front, and then you can also move this strap forward and backwards. So this is a really great gift because it's very versatile. If you put it towards the front, it becomes kind of like a slip-on sandal. And then if you move it towards the back, you get a really good heel lock, and you can use it for trail running or longer hikes and stuff like that. The footbed feels really great. It's a high quality leather. They're made in the USA. And in terms of the sole, it's 5 millimeters. It's a vibram sole, so very durable, very grippy. And I love this sole because it's super versatile. It's got enough room in there for a little bit steeper and slippery hills, but then it's also got enough protection for handling rocks and gravel and that sort of thing. Another great barefoot sandal option is the Monk Ruivo, and this has the same exact vibram sole, but it has cross straps. So if you have anyone who's like sensitive, you know, to the toe thong thing, that's a good option. And also they've got a buckle, which I find to be really convenient. I think the straps on Totem are a little bit more comfortable if you're doing like trail running or anything more extreme where you need a better lockdown, a little bit more softness here, but for casual, they're great. And they're also a nice budget option because they're below $100. And then finally, the DLD Perception could be a really good gift option because you can get these custom. So essentially you send them a tracing of your foot or outline of a shoe or a sandal you really like that fits you well, and then they'll just make a custom sandal for you. You can get lots of different options in terms of colors and strap materials. I like their thicker straps because even though it's kind of a minimal setup, it holds really well. I find the toe thong to be pretty comfortable, even though I was someone that didn't really like toe thongs. And then they've got some good traction here, especially for wet terrain. You can choose multiple footbeds as well, which is great. And then they've got that same vibram tread, which is really versatile for all terrain. For cross training, this is the Lono Flow, and this is also a really good budget option, which can help if you're buying shoes for someone who's like not sure, just kind of like testing the waters with barefoot shoes, because they're also well under $100. And they've got a nice wide toe box. It's very stretchy, which feels amazing. It's got perforation on there, so it's also breathable, but soft in the front, a little bit of protection, you know, but it doesn't cramp your toes anywhere. And then they've got some support on the sides, which is nice if you're doing some lightweight cross training. It's not gonna hold up to like rope climbing, you know, because it is soft. But it'll handle some back and forth, you know, yoga, that sort of thing. And then it's got a slip-in collar, which I also love. Feels amazing to wear barefoot. They use biodegradable materials. And then overall, the sole is 6 millimeters, so very flexible, but just has a tiny bit of padding in there. So again, another good option for a barefoot beginner. The sole is pretty grippy in terms of the rubber. It does have a little bit higher lug, so this gives you some nice traction, but it can be a little bit more slippery on wet terrain, you know, like wet cement or something like that, where it's super slick. But overall, some excellent flexibility, really lightweight, very snappy, good for sprinting, lifting, and even casual. For someone who wants a full barefoot experience, this is the vivobarefoot Primus Lite Knit. I like this version better than the original Primus Lite because it's a bit more stretchy. There's more room in there, has a nice wide toe box, then also has a slip-on collar, which is really convenient, feels really comfortable, and it works for multiple seasons because there's enough coverage here for colder weather, especially if you stack up, you know, some like injinji toe socks. But then there are perforation holes, so it can work in warmer weather as well. I think the original Primus Lite is better, you know, with the mesh if you want something for super fast workouts or really high temperatures like up into the 80s. But in terms of the sole, it's 4mm, so it gives you just a little bit of protection, but tons of ground feel. A great option for anyone who wants to start working on building up foot strength and agility and callus. But then just has a little bit of grip. And this is another one that's great for sprinting or longer runs, weightlifting, and pretty much any kind of training. For someone who's got a bit of a wild side, this is the Vibram V-Trek, and this is a really great hybrid option for both roads and trails. It's got separate toes, so the toe box is wide, but then the toes will spread out to make it extra wide, so this will fit pretty much everyone. I find that they run a little bit long, and I usually wear them shorter, so I would go down like a half a size from what you would normally order because they're supposed to fit like a glove, you know. But I like the V-Trek because it has a wool blend upper, so it's really breathable, you know, antimicrobial, all of that good stuff. But it's fairly thin, you know, so it'll work for summer, really hot hiking and trail running and even road running, honestly, because it's got a 4mm sole. It's extremely flexible. They've cut lines here as well as the toes being separated, you know, so this feels pretty much the closest to like a natural full barefoot running experience that you can get. But Vibram also has very durable, really grippy rubber, and I've been using mine for 7 years and they're still going. These are one of my favorite trail running shoes and they just don't wear out. But another thing that makes them nice for a barefoot beginner is that they've actually got just a little bit of padding in there, you know, a little bit of squish, which is nice for rocky trails or, you know, if you're going on roads and you're not quite ready to go for a completely uncushioned shoe. But overall, a great option for a shoe that can just do everything except for maybe winter and super cold conditions because it can get in through the toes. Another good hybrid option would be the Vivo Barefoot Primus Trail Knit FG. And this is similar to the V-Trek in that it's got a lot of nice room. It's got a stretchy knit upper and some nice toe protection here. So it can work for multiple seasons because if you're going out in snow, you know, it'll help plow through that. And then if you're running or hiking in the summer, it also has some perforation, which is nice. It's got a drawstring lacing system here. I basically never touch this. I just kind of put it the way that I want it, and then you can slip into it, which is really convenient, especially if you're taking off stones, you know, in the middle of a run or a fast hike and, you know, you don't want to waste time with the lacing system. But in terms of the sole, it's 5.5mm, so right down the middle in terms of thickness. And I really like this FG tread because it's the best of both worlds in terms of having just enough room where it can work on semi-slippery conditions, but then also a lot of surface area and coverage protection for running on rocks and roots and things like that. You can use it for fast hiking as well, like I mentioned, but the ground feel and agility is still really good. For something more hiking specific, this is the Vivo Barefoot Magna FG. This is the most versatile barefoot boot I own because the cut is kind of like mid-high, you know, it's not like too high where you can't use it in the summer when it's hotter, but it's got a wool blend collar as well, which is great for breathability in the summer and some insulation in the winter. You know, it's slip-on, which is great. You've got these two thongs, which make it very easy to open the boot up. And then the toe box is fairly wide. You've got a leather upper. It's like medium thick, you know, so it provides some good coverage where you can use this as a work boot. Like I've been using it a ton for working on my van. And it's great because if you're going in and out of the house, you can just slip this thing on and off without having to unlace it. And it's kind of the same thing I mentioned with the trail knit where you just set the laces the way that you want and then you never touch them again. But for the sole, it's got that same 5.5mm tread, good amount of protection and grip. It also feels really good walking on roads. So overall, you can do pretty much anything with these except maybe running because they feel a little bit too heavy for that. If you want the same kind of do everything work boot but on a budget, this is the Zero Denver, also a really good option. Some nice flexibility in the upper, that kind of mid cut, which is versatile for all seasons, and then has a soft leather upper with a good amount of toe box room in the front. It's going to fit most people unless you have, you know, extra wide feet. But the sole is 5.5mm, so very similar to Vivo Barefoot, has some excellent durability, and they've also cut lines in here for some good flex. Has just a tiny amount of padding in there, so this is an excellent option for a beginner, both because of the price and because it just gives people a little bit more protection. But one consideration is that this one is lined, whereas the Magna FG isn't, so this is a little bit more geared towards colder weather. And if you need a vegan option, it also comes in canvas, which I love as well, super flexible, but also still really durable. If you're trying to find a gift for someone who's really picky on materials in terms of ethics and, you know, no toxic dyes, that sort of thing, mukishoes is a great brand. This is the Duna. It's got a undyed hemp cotton upper. and also a cotton lining in the side. It's organic, so it checks all the boxes in terms of sustainability. It's also ethically made in Portugal, has a nice wide toe box that almost becomes extra wide when it flexes because the rubber is very thin and bendable. It's got a stitched sole for durability, and then a 3.5 millimeter tread. So this has the best ground feel if you're shopping for someone who wants to feel like they're walking almost completely barefoot. Another similar option is the Wildling Northwolf. Really anything from Wildling. They're very similar to mukishoes because they have an extremely high standard of ethics. Their materials are really clean. They've got lots of organic, plant fibers, leather, hemp, that sort of thing. They're really comfortable. You've got a leather strip here for sliding your foot in without damaging the material. More of a medium fit. Some of them will verge on wide, especially the new soles. This is the older sole style where it's got more of a tabby kind of look to it and it's split, but the newer ones just have one flat panel, so it's pretty easy to tell the difference. They'll probably say resoled. I really like the resoled ones as well for water resistance. They're just a bit more versatile for nasty conditions. But Wildlings are super lightweight, so it's another one where you feel like you're almost not wearing anything at all. And the sole is 3.5 millimeters, so really excellent flexibility and agility. Another boot I use a ton in the winter is the Magical Alaskan. This is the light version, but either one, they have a zip. And this is so convenient, it's kind of like the Magna FG where you can just slip it on and off. It's a great boot for casual. You could probably even use it for a slipper if you were in a really cold house or something like that. But it's got a fairly wide toe box. It does get a little more slim towards the tip, and it is a bit lower volume up here, but there is more room in the back of the boot. Then for the sole, it's 6.5 millimeters, but it's still really, really flexible. So it's got a bit of a soft feeling for anyone who wants a little bit more padding while still having a ton of ground feel. And the original Alaskan, as opposed to the Lite, which is what this one is, has even puffier insulation for extra cold days. If you're shopping for someone who's really into premium design, this is the vivobarefoot Gobi warmlined. It's got a puffy synthetic lining, which I really love for airflow. I've worn these down to 0 degrees. And the nice thing about them is that you can open them up so wide, you can fit multiple layers of thick socks, like injinjis and then smartwools over that. It's highly water resistant, so it's got kind of a sheen leather, which the water just sort of drains straight off of it. It's also got a stitched sole for durability. And then in terms of the tread, it's 3.7 millimeters, but it does have bit of protection there. So this is one that I can use for urban terrain and sometimes walking on light gravel and trails and things like that, or snow as well. And overall, it's super comfortable for being on your feet all day long. Also, if you need a vegan gift option, this is basically the same thing. It's the vivobarefoot Gobi Hiber, and it's got kind of like a puffer jacket upper to it, as well as bungee laces, which allow you to slide your foot in, which is really convenient. Otherwise, it's pretty much the same boot. One thing I will say is that the water resistance is higher in the leather version, so that's something to consider. If you're shopping for someone with extra wide feet, Realfoot is the best brand for that. This is the Trekker High. This is my favorite winter boot of all time because I don't necessarily need the width, but I just like having it, because you can fit toe spacers in here, and also there's just more room for airflow versus a boot that hugs your foot, which can be a little bit more sweaty, especially if you're walking or hiking faster. It's got a leather upper. They also have a vegan version called the Highlander, just FYI. And then it's got a gusseted tongue, so the water resistance on these is really excellent. I took them out for a walk this morning. It was kind of like wet snow, and they're pretty much all dry. I just stuck them in front of the vent, and now they're good to go. And another thing I really like about the wide toe box is that it gives you a little more traction. Also really like the back here. It's super stylish and feels soft, so you get some nice bend in there for natural range of movement. Another boot, just super light, there's just nothing rubbing or pressing anywhere. The tongue is kind of like a pillow, for your foot. It feels amazing. And it's got a water resistant lining in there. So these are really close to waterproof for me. I've taken them out in some very sloppy conditions and my feet never get anything more than just very slightly damp, on the underside of here. Also, they kind of slim up on the heels here, which is nice because then they fit multiple different foot shapes. If you have someone with extra wide feet, they'll fit in the front. If you have someone like me with more slim feet, then you're not gonna be slopping around in the back. But even if you do have a little bit wider ankles, there's just a ton of room here and lots of flexibility, so it's really never a problem. If you have a friend or family member who lives in a really nasty climate, this is the vivobarefoot Trekker Winter SG, and it has this sort of claw-like tread. It's about 7 millimeters, and it's really great because it's super flexible, but it also gives you a ton of traction on steep, slippery hills. And this is a really warm boot overall. It's got a gusseted tongue that's also lined with wool, but it's not super thick, you know, so you have the option of stacking up multiple layers of socks in there. And then you can get up, you know, to like 40 degrees without feeling like you're sweating yourself out of the boots, you know, which can happen with boots that have built-in insulation, which you can't remove. But it's also got a nice wraparound rubber guard, which serves the dual purpose of keeping water out, as well as preventing the rubber from separating from the sole. And then they're also cut in the back, so even though they're a little bit higher, you know, you can use them in snow. You do get some nice range of motion there. The one thing I will say is that although they do feel pretty good walking on roads because of how flexible the sole is, the tread can wear down a bit faster on rocky and, you know, pavement type terrain because there's just not as much surface area. Finally, for anyone living in an extremely cold climate, this is the Lenka Winter Boot. This is the warmest barefoot boot I've ever tested. It has super thick merino wool insulation and a highly water resistant leather upper, as well as an extra wide toe box, which is nice if you're also going to be stacking up thick socks in there. And then in terms of the sole, it's 8 millimeters, but it has some really good flex actually. And this is another one that'll appeal to beginners because it's got a little bit softer, more squishy feel. You can see that the lugs sort of bend when you press on them, so it feels a bit closer to a normal winter boot that people might be used to. And if you add multiple layers of wool insole in there, it can get pretty soft feeling, but you can also use it on roads as well as trails. It's got that nice claw-like grip that really works well for going up and down slippery hills, but then, like I said, it's a bit more squishy, so it feels great walking on pavement too. All right, so that's my list of barefoot gifts for going zero drop in the holidays, but if you'd like to support the channel, you can shop with the referral links down below. Browse and filter more products with the shoe finder tool at my website barefootwear.org, or watch my zero drop transition video to learn more about barefooting. Finally, if you have a question about shopping for barefoot gifts or about barefoot shoes in general, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time. Peace.